It happened on the way to visit Mom's grave. Are you okay? It's hot. You must be tired. Vincent, Mom's remarried partner, asked me with concern in his voice. He was carrying flowers to place on the grave and was looking around for a spot where we could rest. No, it's not that I'm tired, I replied, glancing at Vincent as if urging him to keep moving. But suddenly, he hugged me. My face was pressed against his chest, and I could barely breathe. Panicked, I tried to pull away. Stop it. What are you doing? Standing in the middle of the road like this, anyone passing by would surely get the wrong idea. Vincent was supposed to be a serious man. So what was he thinking? Fear started to rise inside me, and just as I was about to scream, he whispered quietly enough that only I could hear. Keep still, don't move. Do you see those two people on the sidewalk across the street? I peeked over Vincent's shoulder, following his words, and glanced across the road. On the opposite sidewalk, I saw a face that was all too familiar, and it startled me. What? That's the woman's walk, her posture, her back, it was unmistakable. Next to her, a man walked alongside her, though I couldn't see his face. They didn't seem to notice us, and the two of them got into a cab, looking quite comfortable with each other. Why is she here? My emotions and thoughts raced, unable to keep up. My heart pounded, and my vision started to blur when I heard someone calling me. Get a hold of yourself. I snapped back to reality. At that moment, all I could remember was who was standing in front of me and where I was. My name is Megan. I left my job when I got married, and now I'm a housewife. My husband, Kevin, isn't a morning person and often sleeps right up until it's time to leave for work, so waking him up has become my daily routine. Even before we got married, when we were just living together, if I didn't wake him up, he would stay in bed forever. Let me sleep a bit more. I thought I had the day off. What are you talking about? It's Monday. After nearly 10 years of this, I realize how fast time has flown. We don't have any kids. Sometimes, when I see families with children, a small part of me aches. But Kevin and I talked about it, and we made our choice together. So I don't regret it. Now we live modestly but contentedly. After I finally get Kevin up and send him off to work, I go about my day doing the laundry, cleaning the house. Today is the day Mom is coming over. She raised me on her own, and we lived together until I got my first job. Dad passed away in an accident when I was still very young. Mom was always there for me, helping me with everything: school troubles, career choices, boyfriends. Because of that, we've grown incredibly close, to the point where she feels more like a best friend than just my mother. Even after I got married, nothing changed. We still find time to have lunch together or visit each other's homes. I glance at the clock, sensing that she'll arrive soon, and begin preparing coffee and some snacks. I bring out the financiers I bought, famous for pairing perfectly with coffee. But still, I wonder what this is about. I couldn't help but think about the message Mom sent me a few days ago. I have something to talk to you about, she wrote, unusually formal for her. She normally doesn't phrase things like that. It seems like there might be something serious she wants to discuss today. Before long, the doorbell rings, and I instinctively know it's her. I open the front door. Mom, come on in. I start to greet her, but freeze in place, stunned. Of course, it was Mom standing there, but next to her was a man I didn't know, with a kind expression. The man, who looked about the same age as Mom, greeted me with a hello. I had only prepared 2 coffee cups. This realization flashed through my mind in an instant, but I quickly gathered myself and invited them both inside. Hurrying to set out 3 cups, I sat down with them at the table. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the living room. As I settled in to listen, I was shocked to hear that the man was Mom's boyfriend. Sorry for the surprise. My name is Vincent. Alex has told me all about you, Megan. Alex is Mom's name. Nice to meet you. I'm her daughter, Megan. I almost bit my tongue from the nervousness. This was the first time I learned that Mom was seeing someone. Still grappling with the concept of Mom's boyfriend, I stared at Vincent. His eyes reminded me of Dad's, and for some reason, that made me feel at ease. After talking about how they met and some of their hobbies, the atmosphere in the room suddenly shifted. Mom and Vincent were both looking at me. Actually, Megan, I'm thinking about marrying Alex, and today I wanted to talk to you about that. The suddenness of it all left me speechless. I'm sorry for not saying anything until now, but I've been considering, well, remarrying. This was the first time I had ever heard Mom express such a thought. She had never dated anyone while raising me, devoting herself entirely to balancing work and taking care of the house. And I was so grateful to her for putting me through college while managing it all on her own. Of course, I had no reason to stop them from getting married. I'm surprised, but I'm happy for you. I don't think it's my place to stop your happiness. So you're okay with us being together? Of course. Please take care of Mom. Megan, thank you. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and I smiled at her. You always cry so easily. Whether it was when I entered high school, university, started my job, or got married, she always cried tears of joy for me. But this time was different. Finally, she was crying tears of happiness for herself. I wanted nothing more than for her to find her own happiness. A few days later, we had dinner together, Mom, Vincent, Kevin, and me. Vincent mentioned that he loved collecting leather goods, like book covers, wallets, and bags. Kevin, who also had an interest in leather accessories, hit it off with Vincent at the table. I retired at 65. I used to work as a government employee, Vincent said with a nostalgic smile. Looking at him, I couldn't help but feel like I was seeing a glimpse of Dad. It was a strange feeling. If Dad had been alive, would it have been like this? From that point on, Vincent not only cared deeply for Mom, but also for Kevin and me. Kind, almost overly sweet. He always made sure to check in on us. Because of him, we spent more time together as a family, growing closer over the months. However, it seems that after moments of joy, something bad often follows. A few months after Mom and Vincent's wedding, Kevin started coming home late more frequently, citing overtime. It's the busy season. There's nothing I can do about it, he said. He had been working at the same company for years, and never before had this time of year been especially busy. Really? Yeah, there's a new project starting, and there's just so much urgent work piling up. It's frustrating. With that, Kevin retreated to his room, his tone dismissive, almost like he was hiding something. I felt uneasy about the way he seemed to be covering something up. One humid evening, the news forecasted late-night rain. I waited for Kevin to come home. Even at 12 a.m., there was no sign of him. What's going on? Maybe he was waiting out the rain somewhere, but it didn't make sense that he hadn't responded to any of my messages. No matter how late, he always made it home in time for dinner. Calling the office wasn't an option, and either it was far too late, and no one would be there. I waited in the living room, and at some point, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, the sky outside was faintly light, and the clock showed 5 a.m. My neck and back ached from sitting in the chair all night. Had Kevin come home? Peeking at the front entrance, I saw Kevin's umbrella, soaking wet, left by the door. He had come home after all. If he came back, he could have woken me up, I thought to myself, though I still got up as usual to wake Kevin and send him off to work. From that day on, something about Kevin felt different. He started coming home later and later, and when he did, he wore a permanent scowl. He'd speak to me in grumbled, half-muttered phrases, brows furrowed. If I had done something wrong, I would have apologized, but nothing came to mind. This continued for a while until I finally worked up the courage to ask him directly, "Why are you so angry all the time?" Kevin sighed in frustration, as if my question annoyed him. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing. You've looked upset for weeks. You've got it easy. You're a housewife. You just get to stay home all day. What? Deep down, you're looking down on me, aren't you?" I had no idea what he was talking about. Before I could respond, Kevin turned away and locked himself in his room. I was left confused and unable to make sense of the sudden change in him. It didn't feel like it was just about work stress. Even though I tried multiple times to talk things out with him, Kevin rejected every attempt. "Shut up, just leave me alone, you wouldn't understand." His words felt like a slap, pushing me further away. Gradually, he started waking up on his own before I could go wake him, skipping breakfast and rushing out the door. I'd be left alone in the living room, staring at the untouched breakfast for two, feeling a deep sense of emptiness. Though he never physically hurt me, he would slam doors with force, throw objects in moments of frustration, and his sudden outbursts terrified me. I was living in fear of him, this man who no longer resembled the Kevin I knew. I couldn't bring myself to tell Mom or Vincent I didn't want to worry them. So I endured it in silence, alone. Day after day, night after night, I found myself wishing that morning would never come. But the mornings did come, and with them, more days of silence, more tension between me and Kevin, more moments of being unable to recognize the man I had married. It was a cloudy afternoon, with the threat of rain hanging in the air. I was about to eat the last of the cookies from before when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there stood Vincent, his face pale as a ghost, beads of sweat trickling down his forehead. Vincent and Mom's house was just a 10-minute walk away, but he seemed to have run all the way here. He was panting heavily, gripping a piece of paper tightly in his hand. I invited him in, made some coffee, and waited for him to calm down. "What's wrong? What happened?" I asked when he seemed to catch his breath. Vincent, still shaken, began, "I know it's hard to believe, but..." He hesitated, then said, "Alex has disappeared." "What? Disappeared, gone missing, vanished without a trace? But why would Mom suddenly do something like that? That can't be true. Mom's not that kind of person." I shot back, unable to contain my disbelief. "There's no proof. How can you say something like that?" "Wait," Vincent said, holding up the crumpled piece of paper he had been clutching. "Here's the proof." He handed me the note. The paper was wrinkled and torn from how tightly he had been gripping it. It was a letter, written in Mom's handwriting. To Vincent, "I'm sorry for the suddenness, but I've decided to go on a journey." It read. As I continued to read, my hands started trembling uncontrollably. Half of the letter expressed gratitude toward Vincent and me, while the other half discussed financial matters and funeral arrangements in meticulous detail. "Please don't try to find me. Take care of Megan for me." The letter ended with Mom's signature. What is this? "This looks like a suicide note." Before I could finish my sentence, Vincent nodded slowly, as if understanding exactly what I was about to say. "I know what you're thinking, but I don't want to believe it. I'm sure she's still out there, somewhere alive," he said, almost as if trying to convince himself. "And besides, she didn't explain why she needed to leave. Why leave a note like this and not say why?" He was right. Though it looked like a farewell note, there was nothing in it that explained why Mom would leave. Why would she just disappear like this? "We have to find Mom, no matter what," I insisted. That very day, Vincent and I went to the police station and filed a missing person report. Maybe, just maybe, we could find her if we kept looking. With that small flicker of hope, we searched everywhere she might be. We visited the park, where we had many memories, and the supermarket Mom often went to. We spoke with neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, leaving no stone unturned. We even put up missing person flyers, retracing our steps like something out of a crime drama. But no clues surfaced, and as reality sank in, all I felt was growing anxiety and frustration. One evening, the three of us, me, Kevin, and Vincent, sat around the dinner table in silence, as if the life had been sucked out of the room. It was Kevin who finally broke the quiet. "How long are you going to keep doing this?" he said, his voice laced with irritation. "The letter said not to look for her, right? If that's what Alex wanted, maybe we shouldn't keep forcing it." What are you talking about? That's cruel. Haven't you looked enough? You haven't found anything. Maybe it's time to file a death certificate or something. I was speechless. It wasn't a certainty yet, but deep down, both Vincent and I had started to entertain that very possibility. Kevin's harsh words made us confront it head-on. We contacted the police again, but they had no updates, no new leads. After several discussions, we reluctantly decided to treat the day Mom disappeared as the day of her passing and filed the death certificate. It was heartbreaking. I couldn't stop thinking about whether there was something I could have done before Mom disappeared. But no matter how much I agonized over it, she was gone. Once the paperwork was finalized, we arranged for a gravestone at a nearby cemetery, and it became our custom to visit every year. On the second anniversary of Mom's disappearance, Vincent and I were walking to the cemetery together. Kevin had left on a business trip the day before, so it was just the two of us. His cold, distant attitude hadn't changed. I found myself looking down as we walked, my feet heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. Seeing me like this, Vincent looked worried and asked, "Are you all right? It's hot today, you must be exhausted." He was holding the flowers we brought for the grave, glancing around for a place we could rest. Had I worried him too much? "No, it's not that I'm tired," I replied, trying to reassure him. I looked at Vincent, ready to urge him to keep walking, when suddenly, he hugged me tightly. "Stop it, hey." My face was pressed against his chest, making it hard to breathe. I panicked and tried to pull away, but his strong arms wouldn't release me. Vincent had always been serious and considerate, and more importantly, he was Mom's husband. He had never done anything like this before, and there was no reason for him to now. What if someone saw us? Anyone would misunderstand. What was he trying to do? Fear started to creep in, and I was about to scream when he whispered urgently, just for me to hear, "Stay still, don't move. Look across the street, on the sidewalk. Do you see those two people?" "What?" I cautiously peeked over Vincent's shoulder and looked where he directed me. The street wasn't busy, and across on the other sidewalk, I saw people walking. Among them, I noticed a familiar figure pass by. Mom. I followed the figure with my eyes. From the way she walked and her silhouette, I knew without a doubt that it was my mom. She was walking next to a man. The two of them stopped by a cab, got in, and then drove off. After watching the whole scene, Vincent finally let go and apologized. "Sorry for grabbing you like that. But was that Alex?" "Yes, that was definitely her," I confirmed, my voice shaking. I hadn't gotten a good look at the man's face before they got into the cab, but his build seemed vaguely familiar. Where had I seen him before? It was clear that neither of them had noticed us. Vincent and I found a nearby cafe, trying to piece together what had just happened. As we sat there, everything started to feel more confusing. On one hand, the realization that Mom was alive filled me with joy, and I wanted to run to her immediately. But on the other hand, the questions started piling up. Why hasn't she contacted me? Why had she disappeared without a word? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, feeling as though I'd been betrayed. My emotions were all over the place, and I was on the verge of panic. As my heart raced and my vision blurred, I heard a voice calling my name. "Megan, get a hold of yourself." I snapped back to reality, struggling to remember who was in front of me and where I was. "Take a deep breath and calm down," Vincent said firmly but gently, locking eyes with me. I nodded, focusing on my breathing. Inhale, exhale until I felt steady again. Once I had regained my composure, I turned to Vincent. "I'm sorry for losing control like that. It's understandable. I feel the same. I want to run after Alex right now, but that man with her bothers me. He must have his reasons," I thought, agreeing with Vincent's observation. "Who do you think that man was? Why was he with Mom?" "I'm not sure. He looked too young to be just a friend, though." Vincent was right, he didn't seem to be anywhere near Mom's age. "Maybe we should talk to Kevin about this and consider hiring a private investigator." A private investigator. I hadn't considered that option before. After a moment's hesitation, I nodded in agreement. Yes, that might be the best approach. Megan, I know this is shocking, but please hang in there. We have to handle this carefully. I could hear a slight tremor in Vincent's voice as well. We were both struggling to hide our emotions. That night, I told Kevin everything that had happened after he returned from his business trip. I explained how I had seen Mom walking down the street. Kevin, as usual, looked irritated, but I pressed on. So the police have closed their investigation, but I think we should hire a private investigator next. Kevin, who had been half listening and responding with indifferent grunts, suddenly snapped. A private investigator. That's a waste of time. You know, people say there are 3 people in the world who look just like you, right? It was probably just a look-alike. It wasn't a look-alike. Vincent saw her too. Then it was a doppelganger. Come on, Megan, the police couldn't find her. What makes you think a detective can? No matter what I said, Kevin only grew more hostile, completely dismissing the idea of hiring an investigator. Why was he so against this? I couldn't understand his refusal. Hiring a private investigator seemed like a reasonable step if we wanted to know the truth about Mom. And yet, he was vehemently opposed. While looking at Kevin's profile, I suddenly recall a scene from earlier today. A silhouette and outfit that seemed somehow familiar. The sense of unease I felt back then was vague, but then, in a flash, it clicked. That realization gradually turned into certainty. Later, I met Vincent at the usual cafe to discuss it. I ordered the same coffee from before and drank it all at once. I had made up my mind. When I said I wanted to hire a private investigator to look into Kevin, I was opposed. But I need to know the truth. I'm going to request the investigation without telling him. Huh, are you sure about that? I don't care. I'm past a point of worrying about methods. I was on the verge of grasping the truth behind the unease I had been feeling. Although I had turned my hunch into certainty, I couldn't be satisfied without solid evidence. All right, I'll take care of arranging the investigator. Once the results come in, I'll contact you. We hugged and left the cafe together. Dark clouds hovered in the distance, and a wind that seemed to warn of impending rain blew past us. The atmosphere was heavy. A few weeks later, we met again at the cafe. Sitting next to our coffee cups were the materials compiled by the investigator. This can't be. Even my small murmur seemed to dissolve into the cafe's air. Vincent and I were silent for a moment before he finally spoke. Megan, I have an idea. Vincent's face was more serious than I had ever seen it, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a harsh expression as he explained his plan. After hearing it all, I nodded and agreed. A few days later, I told Kevin, "Hey, I've got a school reunion this Saturday, so I'll be out all day." "Got it. Be careful." He responded in a surprisingly cheerful tone and headed into his room. He didn't seem to notice the cold stare I directed at his back. As planned, I left early Saturday morning. Meeting up with Vincent, we followed Kevin from the place we agreed on. Whistling absent-mindedly, he made his way to an apartment building. He walked right into one of the units. After Kevin disappeared inside, we noted the room number and approached the door ourselves. Dressed in hats and tracksuits to pose as delivery personnel, we rang the doorbell. We heard the lock click, and the door opened. Standing in front of us was a familiar woman. There was no doubt it was my mother, Alex. What, Megan and Vincent? It was painful to see my mom's distressed expression. But Vincent swiftly pushed the door open and entered the room. I followed him, and there, as expected, was Kevin. "What? Why are you here?" "Megan, what happened to your reunion?" "That doesn't matter, not compared to this." As I said this, I slammed down the investigator's report. The scattered documents included pictures of the two walking together in town and leaving a hotel. Kevin's face turned pale, while my mom covered hers. "Yes, the two were having an affair. Explain yourselves. When did you hire a private investigator?" "I told you not to." Kevin clicked his tongue, but when I glared at him sharply, They both resigned themselves and confessed everything. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Kevin isn't to blame." As it turns out, Mom was the first to develop feelings for him. After Vincent and I got married, there were more opportunities to have meals together, and they began talking and touching more. At some point, Mom fell for Kevin. However, she couldn't openly see him, much less live together with him. Knowing that she couldn't break apart my family weighed heavily on her mind. But then Kevin suggested, "If you disappear, we could meet whenever we wanted." "So it was my idea to disappear," Kevin admitted. "By faking her death, they believed they could meet freely without ruining our family." Of course, Mom had her own doubts. She knew it would hurt not just me, but also Vincent. She knew that. "Even so, you chose to disappear." When Vincent asked, Mom nodded. "Yes, I'm sorry. That letter you left behind, was that Kevin's idea too? Everything you wrote?" Vincent's voice was calm but carried a weight of anger, his expression tense as he questioned her. Deep lines formed on his forehead. Mom began to answer, slowly. "No, I wrote it. Kevin told me not to, but I just couldn't leave without saying anything." She must have had her reasons for doing so, but even after hearing her explanation, Vincent and I still had questions. Where had Mom been after she left the house she shared with Vincent? Overseas. I left the U.S. for several months. I arranged the plane tickets and the accommodation. It's all true. No wonder the police couldn't find her. The police had assumed there was no foul play and didn't conduct a full investigation. But with her being abroad, there was no way she could have been found. We had searched countless shops and places full of memories, asked people, all in vain. That's why you said, "How long are we going to keep doing this?" Back then, Kevin knew that Mom was alive and out of the country, and he had grown frustrated with being dragged into what he considered a pointless search. Perhaps because I hit the mark. Kevin fell silent, lowering his gaze. "How could you? You're both so selfish." "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Please, forgive me." After explaining everything, Mom broke down in tears, repeatedly apologizing to me and Vincent, over and over again. Yet, despite all that, she still said she wanted to be with Kevin. That statement shocked me, but no one was more surprised than Vincent. "Why? Was I not enough for you?" he pressed, demanding an explanation for why she would choose Kevin over him. It was understandable. They had married later in life, had just begun living together. And now this. "I'm sorry, I love him. He's kind, cheerful, and always so confident." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she spoke. "But from my perspective, that's just a facade. How could a man who would have an affair with my mom be kind? At home, he always locked himself in his room, and I had never seen the cheerful, confident Kevin she was describing. And besides, I don't have much time left." "What do you mean?" "I have cancer. They told me I don't have long to live." Mom explained that she had refused all treatment, planning to accept her fate when the time came. That was why the letter she left had read like a farewell note. "My whole life, I lived for Megan. I never did anything truly feminine." I knew how much she had struggled throughout her life. Thinking of this, I urged her to continue, but at the very end, her voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence. At the very end, I wanted to live how I wanted to. As she said this, crying, Mom seemed so small. "I understand how you feel, Mom, but I can't forgive you for choosing Kevin over me. Over Vincent. You want to spend your last days with him." I made my stance clear. I knew from the investigator's report that her body had been ravaged by cancer. But so what? No matter the circumstances or how little time she had left, there are still lines you don't cross. "What do you have to say for yourself, Mom?" She struggled to find an answer as I pressed her. Then I turned to Kevin. Earlier, he had been pale, observing the situation, but now the color had returned to his face. Perhaps he felt relieved that no one had questioned him directly. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I have something to ask you as well. I picked up one of the scattered papers on the table, a photograph. It wasn't a picture of me or Mom, but of Kevin walking closely with an unfamiliar woman. The photo showed Kevin and a young woman walking arm in arm, smiling intimately. He had never shown me that kind of affection. Mom stared at the photo, shocked, clearly not recognizing the woman either. Kevin moved his lips as if he wanted to say something, but perhaps deciding it was useless. He cleared his throat and started speaking. Her name is Brock. She works at a nightclub I frequent. Yes, of course, we're dating. He said it proudly, leaving Mom speechless. As for me, I was beyond shocked, just completely fed up. When I first saw the investigator's report, I couldn't believe it, but now it all made sense. Kevin had been carrying on an affair with Mom while also frequenting nightclubs and seeing Brock, and the most absurd part was that he kept living with me all the while. I really wanted to ask how he managed his time for all that. How could you do this while being married? I glared at him, trying to hold back my rage. But Kevin, as if resigned to the situation, let out a mocking laugh. Married? Give me a break. What did you just say? I've had enough of living with you. You'd always come to wake me up in the morning, acting like the perfect wife. He glared back at me with disdain. I kept telling you that your little act made me feel like a fool, but you never noticed. Now that I thought about it, he had said something like that before, so that's what he meant back then. But if I didn't wake you up, you'd complain about that too, saying, "What's the point of living together, then?" Shut up, I never said that. And don't misunderstand, my relationship with Alex wasn't serious either. How could he say that after helping her fake her disappearance? It was about the inheritance. I figured if I stayed with her, I'd get a bigger cut once she passed. Inheritance. It was convenient. Once I got her inheritance, I'd have money to live with Brock. He kept talking as if it was no big deal, but I couldn't ignore what he just said. Live with Brock? Yeah. The only person I actually care about is Brock. I'm sure she feels the same. We're meant for each other, not you or Alex. This man, choosing some other woman over both his wife and his mistress, was truly despicable. As I stared at him coldly, I couldn't help but think how vile and rotten he was. Not only was he hurting me, but he was also hurting Mom without a second thought. Then go ahead and call Brooke, I said. Huh, why? Come on, if she loves you as much as you say, she'll pick up, right? I pressed him, saying I had something to discuss with her directly. Sensing something, Kevin clicked his tongue in frustration and dialed Brooke's number. But no matter how long he waited, she didn't answer. What? Hold on. Why isn't she picking up? Growing more irritated with each failed attempt, Kevin became visibly agitated. What the hell? She's not answering. Did you do something? Maybe, I said, folding my arms and recalling what had happened a few days earlier. After learning about Brooke's workplace from the investigator's report, I had gone to see her. The look on her face when I showed up, her eyes practically popped out of her head. When I told her I was Kevin's wife, she simply said, "I can't believe it." Apparently, Kevin had lied to Brooke, telling her he was single. Not only that, but Brooke herself only saw Kevin as a regular customer and had no idea they were dating. She told me she didn't want to get involved in any trouble and, right in front of me, deleted Kevin's contact information. She apologized sincerely and promised never to have anything to do with him again. I had been worried about what might happen if she got confrontational, but in the end, I decided to forgive her. After I finished telling this story, Kevin collapsed onto his knees. Mutual love. Really? What part of that was mutual? But we went shopping together so many times, he muttered, his face growing pale once again. I never imagined I'd see Kevin look this pitiful. The confident attitude he'd shown just moments earlier had completely vanished, leaving him an empty shell after all his lies were exposed. Feeling utterly exasperated, I handed him a sheet of paper. It's over. Our relationship is finished. Let's get a divorce. I spoke firmly and sharply, though this was still being kind to him. Kevin, with a stunned expression, weakly took the paper from me. "Okay, sign it. Right now," I demanded. Then I turned to face Mom. She, too, was staring at Kevin with a pale face, trembling. She couldn't believe what she was seeing, nor could she believe what she had just heard. She had probably wanted to avoid breaking up her daughter's family, but now here she was, watching it fall apart in front of her eyes. Perhaps she regretted her actions, even just a little. Mom's large tears began to flow. Vincent, who should have been the one supporting her, stood by with a sorrowful expression, not moving to comfort her. He looked as though he was still wondering whether they could repair their relationship or if it was truly beyond saving. "Hey, Mom." I locked eyes with her tear-streaked, red face. "When you disappeared back then, it was really hard for me. I blamed myself, thinking I couldn't help you." I continued, recalling the events from 2 years ago. "And even when I found you later, I felt angry, wondering why you didn't reach out to me if you were okay. But the truth had been far worse than I could have imagined. Megan, I can't forgive you easily, Mom." Though I spoke with resolve, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. I wasn't sure if I was sad or angry, but the emotions were overwhelming. "But at the same time, I know that you gave up the best years of your life as a woman for my sake. That's also true. And I can't help but feel responsible for that, too." "That's not true. Mom, please don't choose a man like that. You might not have much time left, but I want to spend your final days together as a family. You might not have much time left, but I want to spend your final days together as a family." As I spoke my honest feelings, Mom nodded through her tears, and then she broke down crying. Vincent, determined to stay with her, gently held her shoulders, standing by her side. Supported by both me and Vincent, Mom was able to come home with us. For the next few months, I did everything I could to repay her. I took her on trips and treated her to her favorite meals. When her body started to give out, Vincent devoted himself to taking care of her, doing all the small things around her. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Mom seemed comforted by his kindness. She chose to spend her remaining days at home, in the house she shared with Vincent, and as the autumn drew to a close, Mom passed away quietly, with me and Vincent by her side. She was 65. Mom had finally finished her life's journey. Standing before her grave, I whispered, "Mom, you kept apologizing to us, right up until the end." Vincent, beside me, said nothing, only nodding silently. None of us could have predicted such a heartbreaking farewell. The wrinkles etched into his brow seemed to tell the story. By this time, my divorce from Kevin had been finalized. Naturally, I had filed for financial compensation in the divorce proceedings, and Kevin was required to pay me a monthly sum. It wasn't a lump sum, though, because Kevin didn't have any savings. He had spent so much money spoiling Brooke, and even went as far as secretly borrowing money behind my back. Luxury handbags, accessories, the list went on and on. Between repaying those debts and paying me alimony, I heard that his financial situation had become quite difficult. Still unsatisfied, I contacted Kevin's former coworkers and told them about his behavior. I told them how irresponsible he was with women, juggling 3 relationships at once, which ultimately led to our divorce. The coworkers were shocked and spread the news throughout the company, so Kevin's actions became common knowledge. No matter how much he tried to explain, everyone saw it as just excuses, and no one took him seriously. Eventually, he became isolated at work, and his boss pressured him to resign voluntarily. In the end, he even lost his job. As for me, I decided to start a new job. It had been decades since I had worked, so I felt nervous and unsure of myself. But Vincent introduced me to a job opportunity. A friend of mine started a store, and business is going well, so they're looking to hire more staff. It was a specialty leather goods shop, with most of its sales done online. There was a lot to learn, But starting something new was exciting, and each day felt fresh and stimulating. The staff there were a diverse group. Some were mothers whose children had grown, and others were simply passionate about leather goods. As I continued working, I started talking more often with a particular man. He had a hobby of collecting leather wallets and had become a fan of our store after discovering it. He was also a coffee enthusiast, and his favorite treat was the famed cookies, which were said to pair perfectly with coffee. At first, I would simply nod along, but once the conversation turned to coffee and cookies, I found myself joining in. That became the spark that brought us closer. We began meeting outside of work, and before long, we started dating. I was reminded of the coffee from that cafe I had visited before. Its rich aroma and slight acidity created a perfect balance. "I know a great cafe. Would you like to check it out?" When I asked him, he smiled and nodded. That smile made my heart flutter. A new chapter of my life was beginning, and with it, a new love.
My name is Emily. I'm a 32-year-old stay-at-home mom. My husband, Benjamin, is 34 and works a regular office job. We have a beautiful little girl, Mia, in our 8 years of marriage. Our 6-year-old daughter is so cute, she has both of us wrapped around her finger. I have an older sister, Lily, who is 3 years my senior. Recently turned 35, she got divorced due to personality clashes and is now a single mom. Her son, Logan, is just 4 years old, still so young. One day, we had planned a trip to the zoo, just the 4 of us. Unfortunately, I caught a cold and had to stay in bed. Benjamin decided to take the day off from work and go to the zoo anyway. He didn't want to disappoint the kids. Even though they were with the children, it was just my husband and sister alone. Even if they're in-laws, who could have imagined something would happen between a brother and sister? Fast forward to another day. I was walking down the shopping street on my way home from the grocery store when I saw Benjamin and Lily in a cafe by chance. I was puzzled as to why they were together. But I had to pick up Mia from after-school care soon, so I headed home without giving it much thought. When Benjamin got home that night, he told me nonchalantly. We ran into each other and then it started to rain. We just popped into the cafe to take shelter from the rain. So, I believed him. However, from that day forward, he started coming home late more often. He started asking for more pocket money because he said it wasn't enough. He also started going out more on his days off. When Lily came over, their relationship seemed more intimate than before. A string of suspicious events. I couldn't believe it. But I still trusted him. Benjamin still adored our daughter as much as ever, and we still had a good relationship. However, it seems that I was the only one who thought everything was fine. Then, an incident happened that made me realize this. One day, as usual, Lily came over to our house. A friend invited me on a trip. Would you mind taking care of Logan for about a week? A whole week? It's the Bahamas, and it would be tough with Logan. But, please, I haven't been able to take a break recently. I'll bring back souvenirs, so please. She begged persistently. Indeed, I thought Lily had a tough time since her divorce. My parents and I had been helping her out, but raising a child alone is undoubtedly hard. So I reluctantly agreed. As the day of Lily's Bahamas trip approached, I'll be out of town for a few days on a business trip, said Benjamin. He said he would be traveling to several regions, so it would take a few days. I thought it would be tough, but when I heard the departure date, I was surprised. It was the same day as Lily's trip to the Bahamas. Was this just a coincidence? Was it just a coincidence that my sister's trip and my husband's business trip were on the same day? Was it a coincidence that Benjamin was spending more time looking at his smartphone? Was it just my imagination that he seemed to be acting sneakily and trying to hide his phone from me? Was it my imagination that when Lily came to the house, they casually touched hands and were standing closer together? Everything started to seem suspicious. Then came the day of Lily's trip. Early in the morning, Lily came over with Logan. The moment I took Logan's hand, I noticed something was off. His hand was abnormally hot. When I picked him up, his body was also hot. I didn't need a thermometer to know he had a high fever.
Lily, doesn't Logan have a fever?
Yeah, he's had a fever since yesterday. It hasn't gone down yet.
We can't delay. We have to get him to a hospital quickly.
Of course, my son Logan's health comes before a trip. But then, my sister said something outrageous.
Then, I'll leave it up to you. What? That's what I'm saying. I'm leaving Logan to you. You can't possibly be leaving behind a child with a fever, can you?
I have no choice. We've had this trip planned for a while. It's ridiculous to pay a cancellation fee.
It's not about the money, right? Isn't Logan's well-being important?
Of course, he's important. But since you're here, Emily, I'm not worried. Please take good care of him.
Wait, don't go, sis.
Despite my pleas, she left. I couldn't believe it. Logan was suffering with a high fever, and yet his condition worsened from the stress of moving around. So I quickly tucked him into bed and placed a cold, damp towel on his forehead. While preparing an ice pillow in the freezer, my husband woke up.
Honey, it seems like Logan has a fever.
Really?
My sister's awful. She left Logan like this to go on a trip.
It can't be helped. They've had this trip planned for a long time, and it's too late to cancel now.
You too, dear. Poor Logan.
If you're so concerned, then you should take care of him. Honey, can you do something about your business trip? If Logan has a contagious disease, he might pass it on to Mia. I'll take care of Logan, and I need you to take care of Mia. I thought my husband, who adores our daughter, would reluctantly agree. His job is important, but surely our daughter is even more so. But my hope was dashed.
What?
That's impossible. If you're worried, why not leave her with your parents?
That won't work. Our parents are busy with their jobs. And your parents live too far away to drop her off at this hour.
Then it can't be helped. Logan will be fine if we let him rest. Don't worry. Please don't be so casual about this. What do you want me to do? I can't change my plans. Oh, it's time. I have to go now. Bye. With that, he hurriedly left. Left alone, I immediately called my parents. They couldn't take time off from their sudden work commitments. But they agreed to leave work early and pick up Mia as soon as possible. I felt relieved when my mom said that. Until my mom arrives, I'll have to keep Mia locked in her room. I feel sorry for her, but it can't be helped. Meanwhile, Logan's condition seemed to be worsening. He started coughing in addition to the fever. In the afternoon, my mom, who left work early, arrived. I handed Mia over to her and headed straight to the pediatric clinic with Logan. In the car, the motion seemed to make Logan uncomfortable, which was hard to see. The doctor said it was just a common cold and prescribed a fever reducer. He asked us to observe Logan and call an ambulance if his fever went up or if he seemed delirious. I'm sorry, Mom, for suddenly leaving Mia with you. Don't worry about it. More importantly, I'm concerned about Logan. To my parents, Logan is as precious as Mia. On the other end of the line, I could hear my mother's worried voice. After hanging up with my mom, I decided to call my husband's office. I wanted to find out where he was staying on his business trip, just in case. The reply I received was, "I should be on paid vacation." I sighed, lifting my voice towards the heavens as if making a plea. A dreaded suspicion was beginning to solidify. I opened my husband's laptop. I had never looked through it before, but a quick scan of his search history revealed his destination: the Bahamas. Both flight tickets and hotel bookings were arranged by him. I recognized the hotel's name. It was the same place my sister had mentioned. My sister and husband in the Bahamas at the same time, staying in the same hotel. Such a coincidence seemed next to impossible. The mere fact that my husband was in the Bahamas, taking paid leave while claiming to be on a business trip, was an alarming situation. Curious, I looked at my smartphone. I was checking my sister's social media posts. There were no new posts. But looking at her recent posts, although not clearly visible, I could tell she was frequently with someone. The glimpse of clothing I could catch were all too familiar. What changed my suspicion into certainty was a photo where the wristwatch of the man she was with was visible. It was the watch I had given my husband. Although not expensive, it was from a minor manufacturer, hence the unique design. The odds that another man, dressed like my husband, wearing the same watch would appear in my sister's photos seemed infinitesimally small. And then, I found the conclusive piece of evidence. A photo titled "Window Shopping" had my sister's reflection on the glass. On the edge of that photo, also reflected on the glass, was another person. Undeniably, it was my husband. My blissfully ignorant sister must have posted the picture without noticing her husband's reflection in the glass. My hands trembling, I saved all the pictures. There was no mistake about it. My sister and husband were having an affair. Right now, they were together. I felt everything I had built up with my husband crumbling down all at once. I tried calling them numerous times, but soon a voicemail message started playing. It seemed they had turned off their phones. Logan's fever still hadn't broken. Seeing his distressed face, anger started to rise within me. Despite our young child suffering, despite me being in such a difficult situation, right now, my sister and husband were probably laughing, enjoying their vacation in the Bahamas. Could there be a worse story? I was trembling with anger. I wondered what to do, but that could wait. First, I needed Logan to recover. But Logan's fever showed no signs of abating. In fact, it seemed to be increasing. I was shocked when I took his temperature.
107 degrees Fahrenheit.
Children tend to run high fevers. Mia had experienced a 104 degrees Fahrenheit fever before, but never this high. Why isn't the fever reducer working? Logan was completely drained. It looked painful for him to even move.
What should I do?
I fought hard to suppress the panic that was threatening to overtake me. I need to call an ambulance. It was at that moment, with my smartphone clutched in my hand. "Mom," Logan murmured in a small voice. His face contorted in pain, he called for his aunt. Unforgivable. I will never forgive them. As my vision seemed to turn red with anger. Logan's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. A week has passed since then. Contrary to my feelings of sorrow, today was a clear day. Staring blankly at the vast blue sky, tears began to spill over. I had lost count of how many times I had cried. Yet, the tears wouldn't stop. I could feel Mia's hand trembling in my own. The daughter was crying, too. As I lifted her up, I could see my parents weeping uncontrollably over her trembling, small shoulders. And the others in attendance. Everyone, absolutely everyone, was in tears. Suddenly, my smartphone vibrated. I put Mia down and saw my sister's name on the screen. "Hello?"
Emily? Long time no see. I just got back from the Bahamas. I've just landed at the airport. I'm off to pick up Logan. Thanks for looking after him.
It felt like a phone call from another world. I muttered to myself, "He's gone to heaven." A tear that should have stopped fell.
What?
My sister on the other end of the phone didn't seem to understand what I had said. She responded with a clueless question. Heaven? What are you talking about?
I don't understand.
That's what I'm saying. He went to heaven while you were on your trip to the Bahamas.
I don't understand what you're saying.
You'll understand when you get here. The funeral is over, and we're at the crematorium.
Crematorium.
When I told my confused sister the location of the crematorium, she abruptly hung up the phone.
Logan! Logan!
My sister, just out of the taxi, dramatically changed her expression and started running. She called his name and looked around, but Logan was nowhere to be found.
Where is he?
He's not here. Of course he's not.
What do you mean?
I slowly pointed in one direction. Towards the crematorium. The crematorium doesn't emit smoke like it used to, but it's true that he is being cremated right now. Logan, that day, the day you dropped off Logan, his fever shot up to 107 degrees Fahrenheit all at once.
107 degrees Fahrenheit.
The antipyretic we got from the pediatrician had no effect, and his condition worsened rapidly. We had to call an ambulance in a panic.
So that means Logan is...
I don't want to answer that. We're in the middle of a funeral. Saying that, I spread my arms wide, pointing at the crematorium.
Hey, what does this mean? What happened to Logan? Why are you here?
Someone shouted in place of my speechless sister. It was my husband. Unbelievable, my husband had come here with my sister.
What does that matter right now? What about Logan? Of course it matters.
Not losing to my husband's voice, I shouted back.
How can you two just abandon your family and go on a secret love trip? Moreover, Logan had a fever, and even when I said I needed help, you ignored me and went on your trip. Are you out of your mind? What are you talking about? I already know. When I asked your company, they said you had taken paid leave. I checked your computer and found a booking for a trip to the Bahamas. You were on the same flight and stayed at the same hotel as my sister. You think you can just claim it's a coincidence?
I must have had a terrifying look on my face. My husband lost his words under my intimidating stare. Tell me, Emily. Did Logan, did he die?
Do you have the luxury to ask such a question now? What do you think we're doing here? Why do you think I'm in a simple, modest dress standing at a crematorium? Don't you get it? No! No! No!
My sister's scream dominated the scene. As my sister broke down crying, I looked down at her with cold eyes.
You have no right to cry. You abandoned your son to go on a secret trip with my husband. You're the worst kind of person.
I was lonely. I was so lonely all by myself. So I just
what? Reached out to your sister's husband. What do you mean? I've done nothing wrong. It's not my fault. The real villain here is my ex-husband who refused to take our son, and it's not just him. It's also the fault of our parents who never helped me with the child, and Emily too.
My sister reacted angrily, not taking responsibility.
I didn't choose to have a child. and I didn't choose to be a single mother. I wanted him to take our son if we were going to get divorced, but he refused. I've been struggling alone because of that, but I didn't. I couldn't. Logan, oh Logan.
Lily. It was her lover, my husband, who comforted her as she collapsed into tears. It seemed they were no longer interested in hiding their affair.
Don't blame everyone else for your problems. Our parents and I have helped as much as we could. You can't justify leaving a sick child to go on a tryst. Not realizing how rotten you are, you're the worst. Hey, Emily, isn't that a bit harsh? Lily just lost Logan. She's in shock. Shut up, accomplice. I'm divorcing you, so be ready to pay what you owe. What? What does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with it.
My husband and I argued, while my sister cried. It was a chaotic situation. Our parents approached. My tear-streaked sister started blaming them. Dad, Mom. Logan is. Why didn't you take care of Logan properly? Why did you let Logan? Suddenly, there was a loud slap.
Enough with your nonsense.
It was my father who slapped my sister's face.
Don't blame others when you were the one who abandoned your child.
But.
And having an affair with your sister's husband? You shameless woman. I'm ashamed to have raised you like this.
My sister cried even louder at our father's words. I wanted to punch my husband, too. I was glaring at him when... Mommy. I heard a little boy's voice. My sister quickly turned around. There. What? Logan? A man was holding Logan.
Logan? Logan!
My sister ran towards them, but the man quickly moved Logan out of her reach.
Hey! What are you doing, Andrew?
The man holding Logan was Andrew, my sister's ex-husband. He was the one who divorced my sister due to irreconcilable differences.
What are you doing, leaving Logan like that? He's my son, not yours. He's my son too. I complied with the public opinion that it's better for a mother to have custody, even though you insisted on not giving me parental rights. But you wouldn't let me see him no matter how many times I asked, and my worry proved justified. You're not fit to be Logan's mother. Just shut up. You should just pay the child support. I'd pay any amount for Logan. But you left him without care. You don't even know how critical his condition was, and you're out on your affair trip.
That day, when Logan's condition deteriorated, I panicked and called an ambulance. When we got to the hospital and while he was being treated, I called our parents and Andrew, Logan's father. He was surprised when I told him my sister was on a trip with my husband. After that, Logan, who was discharged from the hospital in good health, was resting at Andrew's and his parents' house.
Wait a minute, you're saying Logan's okay? Then whose?
My husband asked, puzzled, staring at the crematorium. I replied, It's our grandmother. Our grandmother, mother to me and my sister, and great-grandmother to Mia and Logan, was in her advanced years and bedridden, living in a nursing facility. She passed away from old age just recently. Despite being bedridden, our grandma was quite lucid and doted on her great-grandchildren Mia and Logan. Whenever we visited her at the nursing home, she would light up with joy. Her sudden departure left us, my parents, and Mia in deep sorrow, unable to do anything but grieve. Logan, who had been ill, couldn't attend the funeral. However, since he'd called my sister to the crematorium, Andrew was there. His fever had subsided, and he looked well.
You tricked us. No one said Logan had died.
My sister accused us with her eyes, but it was we who had the right to accuse.
I didn't hear about Grandma's death either.
She snapped back.
I tried calling both of you several times to tell you about Grandma's passing, but the line was always busy. Considering how kind she was to you, it's unfathomable that you're this late. Enough! You're all making fools of us. Logan, let's go home. You don't want to stay with such a man. You want to be with Mom, right? Andrew, give Logan back right now.
Will you ever stop? The one who scolded my sister, who was bearing down on Andrew, was our father.
Do you still think you can keep Logan with you after all of this? What you've done could have gotten you in legal trouble for child abandonment. You've proven to be an unfit mother. Never think you'll be allowed near Logan again. Logan will be raised by Andrew. Dad, how could you? We've decided to fully support Andrew and hire a lawyer. You are no longer our daughter. We're cutting ties with you. Mom!
My sister's face went pale at the harsh words of her own parents. I stood in front of her with a firm stance.
I'm divorcing my husband, so why don't the two of you stick together? You should be fine not seeing your children anymore. You were able to go on an overseas trip and leave them behind after all.
Upon hearing this, my husband burst out.
Emily, wait! It was just a lapse in judgment. Lily and I were just fooling around. The ones who matter to me are you and Mia.
Then my sister also started shouting.
What do you mean fooling around? You told me you no longer loved Emily and that I was the only one you loved. Stop! Stop the noise! I just love my daughter. Don't mess with me.
And so, the storm had reignited between my husband and my sister. Leaving the squabbling pair behind, we departed from the scene with my grandmother's ashes. After that, we had a lot of disagreements, but having appointed a lawyer, I managed to settle everything. Logan went to live with his dad. I thought he might feel sad being away from his mother, but he was rather pleased. Which meant my sister wasn't functioning at all as a mother. My husband and I had our disputes. Well, more accurately, my husband was obstinate, but after being scolded by both my parents and his, he was feeling down. Then our daughter landed the knockout punch. I don't need daddy. She might be only 6 years old, but girls mature quickly. She must have understood her father's despicable actions in her own way. When our daughter looked at my husband like he was a bug, I couldn't help but laugh. For my husband, who adored his daughter, no, my ex-husband, there could be no greater punishment. He was allowed to see his daughter, but whether she wanted to see him was up to her. And so, the storm came to an end. Mia and I returned to my parents' home and are living peacefully. My parents are thrilled to live with Mia. She's starting elementary school next year, so we're excited about the preparations. I plan to find a job when she starts school. Logan comes by every now and then with Andrew. He looks totally different, his face is brighter, and he's always smiling. Meanwhile, my sister and my ex-husband seem to have ended their relationship quite easily. I guess it was really just a fling for my ex-husband. Perhaps upset about being disliked by his daughter, he dumped my sister without hesitation. However, his despicable affair with his wife's sister became known at his company, which questioned his character, and he was relocated to a remote area. That will make it even more difficult for him to see his daughter. Serves him right. As for my sister, after being abandoned by everyone, she seemed to live like an empty shell for a while. Then she disappeared. We've filed a missing persons report, but I have a feeling we'll never find my sister. That's just the feeling I get.